Oh boy, hello and welcome to the Dill Pickle Movie Network. I am Dylan Randazzo. This is exciting. It is Oscar morning. I have just finished my complete Oscars death race of watching every single nominee nominated this year. If you want to check out those videos, go check them out. They're very fun. I worked very hard in completing that task. And here we are. We're at the Oscars. We got to predict the Oscars, which always is a fun task, but a stressful task because you spend so much time watching these movies and looking at precursors and thinking and mulling it over and watching speeches from other award shows. But in the end, we don't know. At the end, these are people. These are people voting for what they want to vote for. And sometimes trends you have to toss out the window. And sometimes there's some very, very blatantly obvious picks. And sometimes there's some very, very hard to predict picks. And in this case, I think there are 7 races this year that are genuinely wide open, which is so exciting going into Oscar morning. So I just want to say thank you all who have been on for the ride from my Oscar predictions, my way too early Oscar predictions, way back when I thought Oppenheimer might have a chance of getting into some categories, and now is going to be a juggernaut, winning probably 8 or more of them. But then also, throughout the year, as I've been updating predictions and watching these movies, reviewing these movies, and then of course completing my very first death race. So here we go. Let's get into these Oscar nominations. I'm going to start with 3 categories that I think are near locks. These are categories that I think are safest above any other category. I think if you put $1 million on each of these to win $1,001, I would put the million on it because it's an extra dollar in your pocket. I am that confident in these 3 awards. So starting off, which means I'm probably going to get them wrong. Watch it. Starting off, international feature. International features locked up and loaded. It's Zone of Interest. I mean, there's really no kind of question, no comparison there because Zone of Interest is in Best Picture. And since we've seen the opening of 10 films, or 5 to 10 films with this preferential ballot system, we have never seen a movie nominated for Best Picture in the international film category that has lost it if it's its only competition. Now, if Anatomy of a Fall was there against Zone of Interest, then maybe it'd be an interesting story, but I don't think there's any chance that anything else wins because Zone of Interest is the only Best Picture nominee in that category. If Anatomy of a Fall was nominated, though, that would have been probably the biggest WTF race of the night. And I do think Anatomy of a Fall honestly would have pulled it out just based on how the Academy is receiving all these films. Moving on, next, supporting actress, I think is also a lock. Da'Vine Joy Randolph. Mark her down on your ballots. It's happening. She has only lost, I think, like 2 awards this whole season, and they were critics groups. And one of the critics groups she tied, I believe. And I think the other one was like Rachel McAdams who won it. So there really hasn't been anything to spoil this win. And it's going to be a deserved win. It's my favorite performance of the category. And I think it's going to be the one place where they award the holdovers. Spoiler alert, I don't have it winning anywhere else. Though it looked like it could have been a strong contender in some other categories like screenplay and actor. I think this is going to be where they give their love for that film, and deservedly so because it's an amazing performance. And then this might be a little tricky because some people are going to say, Dylan, you're saying it's a near lock when I'm Just Ken is out there, but I am putting Best Song as a lock, Best Original Song, which is What Was I Made For from Barbie. I just think the power of that song is so strong just in its cultural impact. Like, I'm Just Ken's a great moment. It's a great song. People love it. But I mean, What Was I Made It For plays in grocery stores and Uber cars. It won the Grammy for Song of the Year, if I'm not mistaken, a Record of the Year. I don't really still understand the difference. I know I should, and I know someone's going to tell me in the comments, but I don't think there's any way they don't give it to Billie Eilish again. And I'm saying it's a near lock. Nothing's a lock in the Oscars, as we know. But if this weren't to win, I would be genuinely shocked. So now moving on to 8 categories that I think are pretty close to locks. There's 2 that might go another way, but I'm calling this the Oppie 8. These are the 8 categories that I think Oppenheimer is just going to steal its way through. And I think the first one is the biggest award of the night, which is Best Picture. I think right now, this is the least suspenseful Best Picture race we've had in years. And the only reason I say that more so than last year is that Everything Everywhere All at Once was a very clear lock last year. But even then, there was a slight bit in my mind that was like, is it too weird for people? Is it too weird? And ultimately I did predict it, thankfully. But All Quiet on the Western Front was building steam. The problem is here, not the fact that Oppenheimer's losing any steam, because it's not. It's gaining more momentum. People aren't tired of awarding it. And the biggest thing for me is that there's no other alternative. Like, there's no other film that I think is the clear number 2. A lot of people are saying Poor Things is a clear number 2. I would say maybe Zone of Interest is a clear number 2 just because it got surprising support from BAFTA, but even then it didn't get overwhelming support at the Oscars. Maybe it's Anatomy of a Fall because it's going to be a contender in screenplay. Like, I genuinely don't know what the number 2 film here is. And for those saying, well, it's a preferential ballot, so the feel-good movie of the year always stands a good chance. Look at Coda. I see that argument, but also Oppenheimer, it's not a feel-good movie, but it's a movie that everyone loves. And even if you don't love it, I feel like a lot of people still want to award it because it is a monumental achievement in cinema. Not to say the others aren't, but I feel like when you're looking at all these, there are a lot of feel good movies, and I think Barbie's going to be popular amongst a lot of people. I think The Holdovers is kind of the feel good favorite a lot of people are thinking of. But honestly, Oppenheimer's such a crowd pleaser, and this is not a Power of the Dog situation where Oppenheimer is a cold film. It's hard to grasp. I think Oppenheimer is still crowd pleasing enough. I mean, look how much money it made in the box office. I mean, we rarely see this where a film is the biggest film of the year. And this isn't the biggest film of the year, Barbie is, but it's one of the biggest films of the year. It's a box office juggernaut. It's a film that's loved by audiences, loved by critics, and loved by the industry. That rarely happens. The last time that happened was 20 years ago with Lord of the Rings, and then 5 years before that with Titanic. And I don't know if we're gonna see another big movie like this in a long time. Like, this feels like an anomaly, even more so than Everything Ever All at Once, which was very popular but was still a small movie. This is a huge movie, and it's very rare that nowadays we get movies like this winning Best Picture. But the truth of the matter is, it is just the biggest film of the year. It is the most well-received film of the year, just in general. If you just talk to most people on the street, and I really do think it is deserving. It is my personal favorite of the year. That never happens either. Usually, my favorite ends up kind of being in the conversation, then dropping out, like The Fablemans, or I can't think of another example off the top of my head. But this year, it's actually my favorite film, so I'm really happy that it's going to get its due. And I'm also going to put Best Director in that camp as well. I think Christopher Nolan's winning it. I don't think there's much suspense. If there's going to be another upset, it's Jonathan Glazer. But even then, I don't think that's going to happen, because I think Jonathan Glazer, as amazing of a director as he is and was in that film, this is Nolan's time. Next one, supporting actor, Robert Downey Jr. is getting it. This is another one that a few months ago I might have said, watch out for Gosling, watch out for De Niro, but at this point I really don't see a path for anyone else. And I think that's pretty set in stone. I mean, a lot of these we can just go through. The next one, original score. Again, it's going to go to Ludwig Göransson. Like, this is the best score of the year. And this is another thing. I'm talking about cultural impact. Like I said earlier, kind of how Barbie's song was everywhere. What Was I Made For is in your shopping malls and your Uber cars. The score for Oppenheimer's all over TikTok. People are using it in all their TikToks, like the like the big, like, kind of droney sound. But it's actually a really, really great score, and it is a huge, massive part of the movie. And that's another thing too. It's not just a score; it is a character in and of itself in the movie. So I think it's going to win. And then Best Editing, kind of going along with that score thing. This film just dances along, and I think it's going to get that win in editing as well for Jennifer Lame, who deserves it. It's not going to be a lame win. I know people have made that joke, but it's not going to be a lame win. It's going to be a lame win. It's not going to be a lame win. It's going to be a lame win. Get it? Moving on, cinematography. I dropped my pen. Sorry, I'm making notes as I go for things I don't want to forget. Cinematography is also Oppenheimer. This is one of those things where I think this is where they could spread the wealth, but at this point, it's the biggest movie of the year, and if the biggest movie of the year looks really great and is a technical masterpiece, people are going to award it. So I don't think anything's going to beat it. And then I also have sound in the Oppie 8. I think sound is one of the two where, if they're going to spread the wealth, I think this is where they could go zone of interest. But I don't necessarily think the Academy sits down and says, here's how we're going to spread the wealth. Like, they don't do that. I think it's more so they just have a clear favorite in each category. In some categories, it's truly split, and you just kind of have to wage the momentum. But Zone of Interest is getting international, so it's not like it's not going to get anything. I think Zone of Interest would be a really cool winner. It was my Pickle Award winner. If you want to check out the Pickle Awards, check it out in the top right corner. If you want to predict a strong upset and maybe make some money on your DraftKings or whatever sports book you use, you could put some money down on Zone of Interest, but the safe bet is Oppenheimer for sound. And same with actor. Another one that a lot of people were between Paul Giamatti, Cillian Murphy. And I think, with SAG, BAFTA, and Globe, I don't know how you can go against Cillian Murphy. And it's one of those things where I did tweet about this, and I did get a little bit of backlash. But how do you award a film at this point, well, let's say 7 Oscars, the best picture, the best director, the best film of the year, and someone who's so integral to that success, the lead actor, doesn't get it? And I get it. It's different category by category, and maybe people like a different performance like Bradley Cooper's or Paul Giamatti's more, but in my opinion, it just doesn't make sense that the Academy would be so all in on Oppenheimer but not award Cillian Murphy, because he is just the face of that film. It would be like if Barbie was going to win picture and screenplay and director and all these tech categories, and then they didn't go with like Ryan Gosling and Margot Robbie. I think it's one of those things where, kind of like Everything Ever All at Once, where it would have felt weird if Michelle Yeoh didn't come along for the ride, even though a lot of people think Kate Blanchett was better in Tar. I honestly think Daniel Deadwyler in Till was the best performance of last year, but I get it. It makes sense that if this is the film that they're going all in on, then why would the actor be the one thing that they leave off? So I think the one that's going to be left off, unfortunately, is the screenplay, the makeup, the costumes, the production design, and the supporting actress. So there's still a lot of awards Oppenheimer's not going to win, but I think it's going to win win 8, and it's going to be, just to recap, picture, director, supporting actor, score, editing, cinematography, sound, actor. I think those are the 8 wins it's going to get, which is a lot of wins. It's a great amount of wins. Some people are going to say that's too many, but I really think if you look at each of these categories, I don't necessarily think any of them would be not deserved. Even if you're not the biggest fan of one of those aspects or elements in Oppenheimer, even just the people in their careers. Like, who doesn't want to see Robert Downey Jr. finally win one? Or Cillian Murphy, who's been such a respected actor who hasn't gotten his time in the spotlight yet. Or even like Hoyt van Hoytema for cinematography, or Jennifer Lame for editing. Like, these are people that I think the industry wants to award, and it's going to be a great time when they do. So now we're going to move on to 5 categories that I think are pretty strong contenders for locks, even though they're not locks yet, because there might be another film that I could see spoiling it. Like, I don't think these are surefire locks, but they're the most reasonable predictions for these 5 categories. Starting with documentary feature, I think 20 Days of Mariupol is going to take this one. I think it's kind of got the most hype around it. It's got the most relevancy in terms of the war in Ukraine being such an important topic and people wanting to award the subject matter, which is something we'll talk about with the shorts. Does subject matter matter? And in this case, there's a lot of heavy subject matter in these doc features, but I think 20 Days in Mariupol is the most urgent and most current and most, of the now. It's been winning other places. I think if this had other films like Beyond Utopia in it, or still a Michael J. Fox story, like, who knows what would have happened. But I think because 20 Days in Mariupol is also the one that wasn't a big surprise on Oscar morning, like, look at a lot of that list, and there are a lot of those nominations that people were genuinely shocked about when they saw those pop up, like Bobby Wine, The People's President, To Kill a Tiger, The Eternal Memory. Those 3 were all surprises on the day that people were like, wait, that got nominated? It was a surprising morning. So I don't think any of those features, as good as they may be, have garnered enough steam to take it from 20 Days in Mariupol. And I just think, despite the fact that 20 Days in Mariupol is heavy and it's a hard watch, I think most people who don't watch any of these are going to go for the one that feels like the most important, which is 20 Days in Mariupol, at least on paper. And those who do watch it are still going to be like, wow, that's an important message. I'm going to vote for it. I would watch out for Four Daughters, though, because it is probably the most interesting in terms of the documentary art form. And I do think if people all watch these documentaries, I could see people liking Four Daughters more than liking 20 Days in Mariupol. But you got to think, how many people are going to sit through and watch every minute of every documentary? They may turn on a few of the documentaries for a short amount of time. And that's where I think the Oscars in general is a little flawed. But I do think 20 Days in Mariupol is taking it. And next is live action short. And a lot of people should say, have been saying that this should be a lock. And I don't think it's a lock. I think Wes Anderson's the heavy favorite, and I'm going to predict him in this award for the wonderful story of Henry Sugar. But just some part of me deep down just thinks that awarding Wes Anderson is something that this Academy might not want to do, because the short films category is typically about awarding up and comers. There's 2 reasons, though, why I'm going to still predict it. One, I don't necessarily know what the number 2 is. I think it might be Red, White, and Blue, because I've heard so much good reception from that. Just people, kind of like the more universal crowd of people watching these shorts are like, wow, Red, White, and Blue, Red, White, and Blue, Red, White, and Blue. That could be the second place, but even then, I don't necessarily think it's a strong second. Like, I think DraftKings, if you're looking at the betting odds, has Red, White, and Blue listed in the 4th most likely position to win. So I don't really know what the number 2 is, which is a reason why I'm still going with Henry Sugar, because I don't know what would be the alternative. And 2, not everyone is thinking the way of the short film branch, in the fact that not everyone's saying, oh, Wes winning for short film, let's give it to an up and comer. I think most people are saying, oh, Wes Anderson, I love that guy, I want to see him get an Oscar. I mean, we saw Riz Ahmed get one in this category a few years ago, and that was after he had been nominated for Sound of Metal. So it's one of those things where I think the whole celebrity of it all more so affects nominations than it does wins. And the fact that it got nominated, I think it has a good chance of winning. So that's why I'm sticking with it. Next, adapted screenplay, which I think is almost locked up. I'm going to say it's American Fiction. That seems to be the heavy favorite here, even though just part of me just has that gut instinct that they might just sweep it with Oppenheimer. They might just give it to Oppenheimer. I'm not going to predict Oppenheimer, because I think if they are going to spread the wealth, it's going to be here in an adapted screenplay. And we see that all the time. I mean, look at The Shape of Water year. They give it to Get Out. They like giving these more kind of genre, kind of edgier, maybe comedic scripts their time to shine. Like Promising Young Woman won here. And I do think this is where, or didn't win an adapted, it won an original, but you know what I mean? The screenplay categories are where they can kind of get a little bit more fun, a little bit more funky. And I think American Fiction is definitely that bill. I mean, it definitely fits that bill. The only thing is, like, I don't know why when Poor Things and Oppenheimer, these big juggernaut films, even Barbie are in this category, I'm honestly still a little puzzled as to why American Fiction is such a standout. Like I love the script and I think it's great, but I just was expecting it to be a tighter race than it is. And that has me a little worried. That has me a little worried that they're going to pivot. Also, we're not getting the WGAs this year before the Oscar ceremony, which also gives me a little unease with this and original screenplay. But going by based on the precursors, the fact that American Fiction won the BAFTA and BAFTA didn't really like American Fiction. They liked it, but they didn't nominate it in a lot of places. And it still won at BAFTA. It won. It wasn't even nominated. It won at BAFTA, which is huge. That this film that is very strictly American, very kind of not anti BAFTA, but not really the norm of what BAFTA typically awards or nominates. I think that's a great sign. I think right then and there, I was like, okay, it's going to win. Because I think the Critics' Choice Award was a bit of a surprise, but then as it continued to win stuff, and it won the Scripter, I believe. So I really think it's hard to bet against American Fiction here. But this is a part of me is just thinking, is Oppenheimer going to take it because it's Oppenheimer? Is Poor Things going to take it because it's one of the top few Best Picture contenders? Is Barbie going to take it because it's Greta Gerwig and people feel like they have to right that wrong? I don't think that's going to happen because I don't think the Academy is thinking that way. But I think this is where American Fiction is going to take it, though I would not be surprised if any of those other three made it. Zone of Interest, not as much because I don't think people are looking at that as a very screenplay heavy movie, even though I think it's great. So I'm going to go American Fiction, but I think there could be a surprise upset here. If there's going to be a crazy moment of the night, I think it could come from this category. And next, I'm going to go original screenplay. I think it's Anatomy of a Fall. It won the Golden Globe, which was huge considering it was an international script and a woman writer and a first-time nominee. Like, it was so amazing that Justine Triet won for Anatomy of a Fall. I think Anatomy of a Fall is great. I think this is going to be where they want to award it because they're not going to be able to award Sandra Hüller. They're not going to be able to award the editing. I think this is going to be where they're going to award the film because they do love Anatomy of a Fall. The only thing holding me back is the holdovers and the fact that we haven't gotten the WGA awards. And there is a part of me that's thinking if they announce that the holdovers wins, then I'm not going to be surprised because there's a good chance holdovers could end up winning at WGA. The reason why, though, I am confident in Anatomy of a Fall, like actually confident and don't have much worry, is because in the last, I believe, 10 out of 11 years or 11 out of 12 years, I don't know the exact number, they have always gone for a director-writer, a writer-director, someone who wrote and directed the movie. Holdovers was not written by Alexander Payne, who directed it. Anatomy of a Fall was written by its director, and they love to do that. It's kind of like their second Best Director prize, where, we couldn't award you in Best Director because that's Christopher Nolan, but we'll award you here. And that's where I think Anatomy of a Fall and even Past Lives could have a really good case here because those are writer-directors and not like May December, where it's a different writer and director, or, of course, like The Holdovers, which is a different writer and director. So I think the writer-director stat is what's keeping me 100% in the Anatomy of a Fall camp, but I might slightly put that to like a 98% just because there's that slim fact that maybe the WGA went somewhere else and we just don't know. And so maybe the surprise won't be all that surprising once WGA comes out, but I'm going to go Anatomy of a Fall there. And now the last one of these strong contender categories is makeup and hairstyling. And I know a lot of people are saying they're going to spread the wealth. They're going to spread the wealth. And then some people are saying they're not thinking like that. They're not thinking like that. This argument is kind of going against what I said earlier and the fact that I think they're going to spread the wealth and they're going to give it to Maestro. But I don't think they're going to spread the wealth because they're spreading the wealth. I think they're just going to happen to spread the wealth by giving it to Maestro. I think they're going to genuinely want to give Maestro the win. And I think it's just because of the pattern of what we see with this category in the winners. I mean, we typically do see more so historical transformations, big transformations. I mean, look at The Whale, look at Darkest Hour, these films where all this makeup, Iron Lady, all these makeups and hairstylings really transform the centerpiece being Bradley Cooper. I think Poor Things, people are saying, could be a spoiler in this category, but the thing with the Poor Things is it's fantasy makeup. You're not trying to recreate someone who already exists. And Poor Things, the makeup centerpiece is Willem Dafoe. It's not Emma Stone. And typically, if a film is going to win Best Makeup, usually their centerpiece is at least nominated. I mean, look at The Whale with Brendan Fraser or The Eyes of Tammy Faye with Jessica Chastain. With makeup and hairstyling, I think if Willem Dafoe had been nominated for Poor Things, I would have thought about it twice, maybe. But the fact that he wasn't nominated means that maybe, Poor Things isn't going to be as widely loved in the makeup category as people are expecting. I just think Maestro has been the strong contender all year. It also won the Makeup and Hairstyling Guild Award, which is, I think, pretty much enough for Maestro. And I think the Academy does like Maestro. I know the audiences haven't been loving Maestro, which is a little weird because I love it too. I think it's great. And Alan, I know you're listening and I know it's your number one film of the year and I'll stand with you, buddy. It's not my number one film of the year, but it's damn good and people should respect it. But I think this is going to be where they award it, and not because they're spreading the wealth. Like I said, I think it's more so going to be because they genuinely think it's the best makeup, and it was the biggest transformation of the year. And sure, Emma Stone went through a big transformation, but that was mostly a hair thing, less a makeup thing. And I think they really hone in more on the makeup than the hairstyling. And even the hairstyling in Maestro was great with Carey Mulligan and with Bradley Cooper himself with his old age hair. So, moving on now to the 7 categories that I think are genuinely up in the air. I have no idea how any of these are going to go. I have an idea for a few, but some of them I'm still agonizing over. And the first one is documentary short, which a lot of people have been saying the ABC's a book banning. ABC is a book banning because of the subject matter. But I like to believe that people who are voting for the Oscars are either going to abstain if they haven't seen the shorts, or they're going to vote for the ones that they saw that they liked. And if they don't watch the shorts and they go by the catchy title or the best, you know, messaging, the best story, I think ABC's a book banning could win in that case. But if they are as stand up as I think they're going to be, and they decide to actually watch these shorts, there's just one short that just feels the most cinematic. It feels like the fullest. It feels like the most epic. It feels like the right winner, and that's The Last Repair Shop. So I'm going to go with The Last Repair Shop just because I really do think it's one of those winners that looks like a lot of other winners in this category. It's kind of grand. It almost has the production value of a feature-length film. And in documentary short, they actually like their shorts to be longer, and this is the longest, I believe, of the shorts. This is a tough one, though, because ABC's a book banning definitely could win. But I just have that gut instinct that enough people have watched it and realized that the message is better than the actual execution of the film. It's a film I didn't love very much. ABC's a book banning, whereas I think The Last Repair Shop is one that if you do watch, I don't know how you don't award it. Maybe I'm off base. I don't know. But I'm going to go Last Repair Shop. Maybe that's a big, pot shot pick. I don't know. Next, moving on to animated short. This is another one that I think has become a little bit clearer in the consensus, but I still can't feel confident just because it's the animated shorts. How can I feel confident in animated shorts? I'm going Wars Over because not just because everyone else is saying so, but because I genuinely think they tend to, in this category, go for the sweeter film. They like the ones with the cute animals. I mean, look at Piper, from a few years ago, or I guess more than a few years ago. That was a while ago at this point, but I think they go for the one with the cute animals and the heartwarming story. Occasionally, they've gone for the one that's a little bit more out there, a little bit more wild, a little bit more weird. But I don't know if they're going to do that this year. I think they're going to go for the one that makes them feel good the most. It's got John and Yoko's names in the title. It's got that catchy song that they all love. And I think when you have films like Letter of a Pig that are very challenging, and 95 Senses, which has some maybe, questionable, subject matter and like this whole like death row story, like is it something the Academy wants to award? I think it's great, but it's a very touchy subject. It's a very close to home subject. Like I really don't know how they're gonna go, and they go crazy ways sometimes, and I almost wanted to pick an upset here, but I'm gonna go Wars Over. I just think that's where the momentum is shifting right now, though it doesn't have great Letterboxd scores, and usually the winner of this category does. So I don't know. I've talked myself in and out of it over and over. But let's go to one that's like a very big category that I think has become a little clearer with SAG, but is still a little up in the air, and that's Best Actress. A lot of the Oscar season I thought was going to be Emma Stone, Emma Stone, Emma Stone, but I think with the SAG win and a Golden Globe win, she had a Golden Globe win. I think Lily Gladstone has emerged as the front runner, and it really is a neck and neck horse race. Emma Stone, she won the BAFTA, she won the Critics' Choice, she won the Globe. Lily Gladstone won the Globe and the SAG. So Emma does have one more than Lily does, but you have to look at momentum. And when you look at how the voting works, the last ceremony is always the one that's going to have the most weight. When Chadwick Boseman lost to Anthony Hopkins had just won the BAFTA. The BAFTA was last that year. Last year, the SAG was last. Michelle Yeoh wins over Kate Blanchett. Michelle Yeoh wins the Oscar. So I think I'm going to follow that line of thinking because last year I was so off base. I didn't pick Jamie Lee Curtis. I don't know if I picked Kate Blanchett or Michelle Yeoh, but I was a little off base last year. I think I picked Austin Butler over Brendan Fraser because of the BAFTA. And I was going really heavy in the BAFTA's favor when in reality I shouldn't have gone BAFTA or SAG. I should have looked at what was last, and that was SAG. This year, SAG is last again. And I think whatever's last, you have to look at, and that is Lily Gladstone winning for SAG. It's the freshest in voters' minds. And yes, they turned in their ballots while SAG was still going on, but enough ballots were probably submitted after SAG where I don't think the actual timing of the ballots in SAG is going to have anything to do with it. I think Lily Gladstone also has the story, and that's something to look at when looking at the Academy and what they want to award. They really love to give like this really compelling story the win. They want to make it about the moment. They love doing that, and I think this is, of all the acting categories, I mean, Divine Joy Randolph, that's such a monumental moment. Robert Downey Jr., of course, Cillian Murphy, but this award, would be groundbreaking. And I think that's why they can't refuse that. And I'm probably going to be wrong because I'm saying it so confidently, but I do think Lily Gladstone, and again, if we are going to talk about spreading the wealth, which I still don't think is a thing, I don't think they sit down and go, okay, I'm going to go here, 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 because if they were just doing that all the time, if every voter was trying to spread the wealth, then all these categories would be all over the place. I really don't think they're trying to spread the wealth, but I think they will end up spreading the wealth, and this will be where Killers of the Flower Moon gets its award. Next on to animated feature. Ooh, this is a two-horse race. Boy in the Hair and Spider-Man. What's it going to be? I'm not going to tell you right away. I'm going to tell you what the stats are telling me. And that is that no one has ever lost this award having won BAFTA and BAFTA and Globe, which is what Boy and the Heron won. So Boy and the Heron should be winning this. But also, no one has won this without the ready for this, the uh Critics Choice and Annie Award combo either, which would be Spider-Verse. And Spider-Verse is also the only animated film to get nominated between the two for the editing award for the Ace Eddie, I believe, and Boy and the Heron did not. So part of me is saying Boy and the Heron because of the stats. Part of me is saying Spider-Man because of the stats. Either way, a stat is going to be broken. Either Boy and the Heron's going to get nominated without an animated editing nomination at the Eddie Awards. And I don't have that info in front of me, so I might be a little bit off on that info. But also, no film has ever won Golden Globe and BAFTA and lost this, which just makes me think it's going to be Boy and the Heron. So I'm really going back and forth. And ultimately, I settled on Toy Story 4. And I'll explain what that means. Back a few years ago in 2019, Missing Link won the Globe, and then Klaus, I believe, won the BAFTA or something like that. And people were like, oh, is it going to be Klaus? Is it going to be Missing Link? Is it going to be I Lost My Body? And then it ended up being Toy Story 4. Why? Because Toy Story 4 is it's a great film, but it is the more populous pick. And I think in the end, when you're looking at these nominees, and Miyazaki's not retiring because he said he's going to make more, I think they're going to go for the most populous pick, which is Spider-Verse. Now, this could be a very different category. Like it could be Boy and the Heron, but I feel like just in my gut, when they open that envelope, what film feels most likely that this Academy is going to pull out? Because Spider-Verse is still diverse. It's still got queer themes. It's still got great, themes about race and color and gender. And I really do think Spider-Verse is more progressive than we're giving it credit for. And I know it's a sequel, but if it's a very successful franchise, I mean, look at Toy Story. It won for Toy Story 3 and Toy Story 4. Like sequels aren't necessarily, Oscar, immunity, kryptonite. I'm losing my words. I'm recording this late at night, but I do think it's going to be Spider-Verse for those reasons. Even though Boy and the Heron has the stats on its side, Spider-Man also has the stats on its side. So it's really which stat do you think is going to break? And I think it's going to be the Globes BAFTA stat, only because the Globes are different than they've ever been. So I don't necessarily take that Globe stat too reliably in this year of all years because the Globes are so different. So that's going to be the deciding factor. The next two categories I almost want to talk about together. It's production design and costume design. I'll start with production design. This is a hard one because every year I feel like I look at the BAFTAs and I look at the guilds, and it ends up going a different way. Last year, I predicted Elvis, and it lost to Black Panther, Wakanda Forever, and I believe both these categories. And I feel like Critics' Choice predicted that, and I wasn't thinking of Critics' Choice as a real strong precursor for these categories, but at the end of the day, I'm looking at these categories, and part of me just thinks it's so obvious that Barbie is going to win these, but part of me is also thinking it's so obvious that Poor Things is going to win these. So production design and costume design. I know a lot of people are doing the split. A lot of people are saying, well, Poor Things will win production design and Barbie will win costume design. The problem with that is that if Barbie wins both, you lose one, you're safe, whatever. Poor Things wins both, you're safe, whatever. But if it's a split in the other direction, then you get two wrong. So I'm going to hedge my bets. I'm going to be safe. And while I do think it's going to be a split, I do think it's going to be a split. And I if I had to predict, I'd probably say Poor Things might win production design, costume design might go Barbie. But I think for the safety of it, just in case it swaps and Barbie wins production design and Poor Things win costumes, because listen, the costume design, they love their period pieces. They love their old fashioned kind of dresses and costume dramas. And Barbie's very contemporary. It's very different than any other costume design winner we've seen. Production design, kind of the opposite. They tend to go for the more whimsical stuff than the more kind of lavish stuff. But I'm going to predict Poor Things for both because I think safe is better than too wrong. And I think if I do predict production design Poor Things and costume design Barbie, and Barbie and Poor Things end up swapping, I'm going to really regret it. So I'm going to put Poor Things in both. Also because if you just look at two movies, I think Poor Things has a lot more momentum. I think Poor Things because I have it losing makeup, I have it losing actress. This is where they have to award Poor Things. Otherwise, it goes home empty-handed. And I just don't see a world where Poor Things goes 0 for 11. It would tie The Color Purple and Turning Point for the most Oscars ever lost without a win. And it would also tie Power of the Dog, which lost 11 Oscars but did win Best Director. So that's kind of an outlier. But I don't see Poor Things joining that company. I just don't. So I think Poor Things is going to pick up something. It's going to be one of these two. And I'm predicting it to win both, just because I also think Poor Things is a more of an Academy darling. I think Barbie was more of a critics darling, which is why it won the Critics' Choice. But so was Black Panther Wakanda Forever. It was more of a critical darling than Elvis. So I don't know. Organizing. That's why these are in the WTF categories, because I genuinely don't know. But I'm going to go Poor Things for both, just because I think it's better to be safe than sorry. And if I predict it for both and it wins one of them, I'm getting one right. And if it wins both of them, then I get them both right. I don't think Barbie's winning both. And that's the thing. I don't think Barbie's going to win both. I think Poor Things is going to win something. So that's why I'm saying, you know what? If I go all in on Poor Things, Barbie's getting songs, so it's that spread the wealth thing. I keep arguing against spread the wealth, and then I end up spreading the wealth. So hey, I'm spreading the wealth. Lastly, this is the last category, visual effects, which is the last alphabetically as well. But visual effects is a nightmare this year, because you look at this. Look at the precursors. Who's been winning visual effects at the precursors? Oppenheimer and Poor Things. Who's nominated for the visual effects? Not Oppenheimer and not Poor Things. Okay, so scratch that. Then we look at this. Well, what film is nominated for Best Picture? Because this is where 1917 won. This is where we see sometimes that we will see the winners for visual effects come from a Best Picture nominated movie. How many of these nominees were nominated for Best Picture? Zero. So now we're at square one again. And now we look, okay, what is the Visual Effects Society saying? Visual Effects Society went with the creator. Cool. But the creator's reviews are crap. And if we're looking at this Best Picture thing as a possibility of like what film is closest to getting a Best Picture nomination, it's not the creator. The creator is nowhere close to a Best Picture nomination. I would say that Napoleon and Godzilla are closer to a Best Picture nomination than the creator was. So the creator, that's a knock against the creator. Knock against Godzilla is it has no precursors. There's nothing to base this win off of except for solely passion. Now, passion can get it a long way. I think Godzilla, if it wins because of passion alone and because a lot of people caught on to it late. And if they had caught on earlier, maybe it would have been nominated for more. But part of me just thinks it would be such an outlier if it won. It would literally be like Coda winning Best Picture a few years ago, which happens, but it's just so rare where you're going to have something that just breaks every single stat. And I just don't see Godzilla doing that. So I'm eliminating Godzilla. So now it's between the creator and Napoleon. The creator has a Visual Effects Society, but Napoleon is probably the closest to a Best Picture nominee of any of these five, just because it's gotten other tech nominations. And that's worth noting too. Napoleon's nominated in 2 other tech awards, production design and costumes, and the creator's nominated in sound. So clearly they have a lot of support elsewhere. So I think about the creator and I think about Napoleon, and in the end, at the end of the day, I'm going to go with the creator, just because in a category that's so wide open where there are 3 legitimate contenders, because Godzilla could still win. I think Guardians and Mission Impossible can sit this one out, because I'm not going to believe a Marvel movie is winning until I see it. And I just don't think Dead Reckoning had the strongest visual effects. I'll just be honest. When I'm looking at the 3, I think Godzilla is just such a stat breaker that it would really have to rely on just the utmost passion. And honestly, it's one of the harder things to get because it's one of the only films that's not on streaming. So you need a screener, and all the Academy has screeners. But how many of them are going to prioritize watching Godzilla when they could watch something that's nominated in 2 categories, like the creator, or something nominated in 3 categories, like Napoleon? Napoleon, though, is it really going to win visual effects? Is Napoleon really going to win visual effects? And that's where I had to keep asking myself. Every visual effects winner for the past however many years has been nominated in production design, which makes me think, well, Napoleon's a shoo-in, but just no part of me thinks that Napoleon is going to walk away with an Oscar this year. And I think that's the biggest detractor for me, where at least the creator, it's not well reviewed. It's nowhere close to a Best Picture nominee. So it kind of defies that kind of thinking that the visual effects department finally, sometimes has. But at the end of the day, when you're looking at side by side all of these showcases, they do these bake-offs where they basically show their visual effects. There's so much visual effects in the creator that are so good that I just think it's going to have more of an edge. Where Godzilla, it's all about the monster. And Napoleon, it's all about the war sequences. Whereas, the creator, everything from the sets to the characters animation, every time a character is animated in this film, they have some part of them that's robotic. So I think the creator, I'm ultimately, despite the fact that I don't think many people are passionate about the creator in general, I think the creator with the Visual Effects Society win also helps a lot. even though it's not 100% reliable, I'm going to go the creator here, even though I don't feel strongly about it. And I do think there's a very strong possibility that Godzilla or Napoleon takes it. But I think that's where I'm going to land with that. Those are my Oscar predictions. We got it under 40 minutes, which is good. I was hoping for a half hour. We're a little over. I'm very tired. I need to go to bed. I'm recording this. Now it's 3 a.m. I recorded this at 1 something, but now because of daylight savings, it's 3. So I need to get to bed so I can edit this in the morning, get it out to y'all, along with my Oscars Death Race final video where I talked about all the tech awards and who I think is going to should and will win those. But that's it. That's my Oscar predictions. Write them down. I'm going to go through them one last time very fast just so you can mark them down on your ballot right here, right now. I'm going to go in order of how it might be in the ballot. Best Picture, I'm going Oppenheimer. Best Director, I'm going Oppenheimer for Christopher Nolan. Best Actor, I'm going Oppenheimer for Cillian Murphy. Best Actress, I'm predicting Lily Gladstone for Killers of the Flower Moon. Best Supporting Actor, I'm predicting Robert Downey Jr. for Oppenheimer. Best Supporting Actress, I'm predicting Da'Vine Joy Randolph for The Holdovers. Best Original Screenplay, I'm predicting Anatomy of a Fall. Best Adapted Screenplay, I'm predicting American Fiction. Best Animated Feature, I'm predicting Spider-Man. Best International Feature, Zone of Interest. Documentary Feature, 20 Days in Mariupol. Documentary Short, The Last Repair Shop. Live Action Short, The Wonderful Story of Henry Sugar. Animated Film, War's Over. Animated Short, sorry, War's Over. Cinematography, Oppenheimer. Film editing, Oppenheimer. Costume design, Poor Things. Production design, Poor Things. Makeup and hairstyling, Maestro. Sound, Oppenheimer. Score, Oppenheimer. Song, Barbie for All What Was I Made For. And visual effects, The Creator. So there we go, guys. We did it. We're done. Have a good rest of your day. Happy Oscar night. I will be back tomorrow to show you my thoughts. I don't know if I'm going to record myself live or not because honestly, I'm not predicting to get any of these wrong. So there should not be any surprise reactions. Just kidding. There's going to be something crazy. I know I'm going to get something wrong. I've never gone perfect in these, so I'm not going to, say that. I'm not going to put that out there. Thank you so much for watching. I got to get to bed. It's daylight savings, so it's already 3 a.m. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.